Hey everyone, this is Libertarian Black Man. I want to shed some light on the so-called low unemployment rate situation that we have in America today, because people need to understand what low unemployment really is. If you say that the unemployment rate is low, you have to be able to compare it to another time in history of low unemployment or of high unemployment to see if your rate is as low as it's being made to seem like. So today we're saying that the unemployment rate is low at 3.7% because that's where the unemployment rate is today, 3.7%. Now this chart that we have here is from the St. Louis Federal Reserve's website, and it shows the unemployment rate over the last 70 years from 1948 to today. Today it's at 3.7%. If we look a little bit closer at the last decade or so, we can see that we were at 10% 9 years ago. And we've been sliding down all the way to 3.7% over the last 9 years. This is progress in that we've been going down more than 50%, down to 3.7% from 10% 9 years ago. However, if you look at where unemployment was at numerous points in the last 120 years, you'll see that we've gotten to a level lower than 3.7%. For example, in 1969, which is the last time we saw 3.7%, we dropped down to 3.5% that year and 3.4%. So today we're at a 49-year low in the unemployment rate, but the unemployment rate got even lower than 3.7, not just in 1969, but even lower back in the early 1950s. We were in the 2 percentile, and we got down to 2.5% in 1953. This line, when it spikes up like this, symbolizes a recession, where people are losing their jobs, unemployment is going up. When the line comes down, that's a period of growth or emerging from a recession. So this is a recession here, this is a recession, this is a recession, and this is a recession. Whenever the line spikes up and peaks, that's a recession, and when it descends, that is when we're coming out of a recession and going into a period of growth. This line does not go back but 70 years. So if you want to see how low unemployment got before the late 40s, this chart, which is the data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's located on the St. Louis Federal Reserve's website. If you really want to see the first half of the 20th century, you have to look at a different document. This is the document that gives you that information. Annual estimates of unemployment in the United States from 1900 to 1954, published by Stanley Lebergott, who worked for the National Bureau of Economic Research. And you will see that we had unemployment rates dropping below 3.7% over a dozen times over the last 120 or so years. In the late 1940s, for example, 1947, 48, the unemployment rate dropped to 3.6% in 47 and 3.4 in 48. In the early 50s, 1951, 52, 53, we achieved an unemployment rate of 3%, 2.7, 2.5%, lower than today. You can look at the mid-40s, 1943, 44, 45. Unemployment went to 1.9, 1.2, 1.9%. Now, what people will say about this period is, of course, yeah, unemployment went down into the 1 percentile for one reason only, because we were fighting World War II. We drafted men by the millions, we turned our factories into war machines, and presto, lots of employment down to the 1 percentile. As far as people out of work, almost nobody was out of work during this period because we had a war to fight, and unless you're fighting a world war, you can't achieve this level of unemployment. That is not true. Just go back a few more decades, and you'll see we achieved an unemployment rate of below 3.7%, but even at World War II levels, 1.9% here. In 1926, we had an unemployment rate of 1.9%. If you go back a few more years, you'll see that at many times in history, we achieved an unemployment rate lower than today. 3.2% in 1929, 3.2% in 1923. After a very severe recession, as you can see, we went to near 12% in 1921. 2 years later, we're down to 3.2%. You go back, we had 2.3% in 1919 and 1.4% back in 1918. Once again, people will say, yeah, but that was the First World War. Once again, you can't get down to the 1 percentile unless you have a war going on where you're drafting people by the millions and putting them to work in factories to make weapons. But if you scroll back a few more years, what you're going to see is something that most people probably have never heard of. The lowest rate of unemployment in history was in 1906. We got down to 0.8% in 1906. This is a year without a war. This is a year in which we were not just emerging from a war or about to go into war. We were clear. We were just running on economic growth. And we achieved near full employment during this time. People are saying that we're near full employment today at 3.7%. No, we're not. We dropped below 3.7% at numerous times. We're at 3.1% in 1905. During the first few years of the 1900s, we were in the 2 percentile, 2.4, 2.7, 2.6%. 1901, 1902, 1903. So the idea that we have this spectacular unemployment situation in America today is just not true. If you look at the last 10 years, sure, that's a very short time horizon. So you can say we've achieved a pretty good employment situation, being that we cut the unemployment rate in half over the last decade. But if you look at the last 120 years, you'll see that 3.7 is actually pretty high 9 years after a recession ended. As I said here, in the early 20s, 2 years after a recession ended, we went from 12% to near 3%. We used to recover from recessions faster and have much more robust economic growth after recessions, which is why we were able to achieve such low rates of unemployment so much faster after a recession ended than we have over the last 50 years and especially the last 10 years. So I want to put this in the proper context, because people are saying, well, the economy is gangbusters today. We've never had it better. We're at a near 50-year low in unemployment. 3.9% or 3.7% is really great, near full employment, but yet we have 7 million open jobs and 6 million people who are unemployed. These people should be working, but for the reasons of government benefits being too generous and people not having the right skill sets, people can't or won't take these open jobs. We have more than 1 million jobs that are not going to be filled even if we were to put all the people unemployed to work. If we were to have that kind of situation, the unemployment rate would more resemble what we had in the early 20th century. than what we have today. So people need to know the right context. If you look at the last 10 years, we're doing pretty good. If you look at the last 50 years, we're doing pretty good. If you look at the last 120 years, we are not doing so well. And unfortunately, in the news, you don't have the kind of context that's provided unless you do more in-depth research, because there's only so much time in a news segment. And it's all about ratings and entertainment. So they will talk about the last few years because people can relate to that more. But if you really want to know the truth, you do have to dig a little bit deeper. It's just the nature of knowledge. You have to know more than what you're just being told in a few minute segment on TV. So I'm glad and happy that I'm able to provide this kind of information, and anyone can look this up. This is a document that you can just Google. Anyone with access to the internet, just type in annual estimates of unemployment in the United States. Or go to the St. Louis Federal Reserve's website. This is updated every month, and you can see what the unemployment rate is doing. You can see when a recession is beginning and ending, because you'll see the line spike up and down based on whether or not you're in or out of a recession. And you can stay in touch with what is really happening in the economy. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we hope to see you guys again soon.